Hi, my name is Perrin Stamatis. I'm a teacher, a designer, and a musician, and I live outside Chicago. I am currently teaching at Northern Illinois University at the School of Art and Design, working on design projects at Scratchboard Design. And in 2018, I started the Scratchboard Foundation specifically to raise funding for this interactive timeline project and others. In this talk, I'll summarize the research that led to the development of this interactive timeline of typographic history, demonstrate the version 1 prototype, share plans for version 2, and ask for a little help. I'd like to begin with a musical example because it illustrates a point in a very clear way that we can compare to typography. There was a jazz composition that was so revolutionary in 1959 that it completely changed the mathematics behind melodic and harmonic structures. It made professional recording artists and performers feel ashamed and inadequate. To this day, musicians have been analyzing and diagramming the chord progressions and sharing new discoveries. To perform this piece and play a solo is a significant rite of passage, and it marks an expert-level milestone. It is a powerful, intense, almost confrontational, fast-paced ride. But when my friend, a newcomer to jazz, heard this, he didn't hear all the things I just mentioned. He heard the recording and thought it sounded like elevator music. I was in a state of shock, but eventually I did have to agree with him that what he was saying was valid and true. It was one way of experiencing it. And I want to focus on what happened here because both experiences are true. And I'll keep coming back to this point. So while it's possible for giant steps to be viewed as elevator music from a certain perspective, a newcomer to typography may view this typeface, you know it's coming, as the movie font, the movie poster font, because this is everything that we've been hearing for years. This has been going on. And again, both of these interpretations and perspectives are true and valid. Now, this can be a bit frustrating, but there is a positive takeaway from all of this. Those new to typography are arriving with an almost expert-level understanding of the connotative meaning of type. A connotation is a commonly understood cultural or emotional association that some word or phrase carries, or in this case, a typeface carries, in addition to its explicit or literal meaning, which is its denotation. Students come in with this movie font association, and they also use these words to describe it, and then we connect them with the denotative side. For black letter, it's no different. They make these associations and descriptions because this is what we all see out there in the world in use. Yet they are unaware of the denotative side. We all have to learn this at some point. Nobody's born with this knowledge, right? So lecturing about the denotative history will provide an awareness, at least it makes someone aware of the information, but it will not provide much context, and it will not create a deep understanding. And most importantly, it doesn't foster appreciation. And it's just not providing what's needed. Both the connotative and denotative are true and important. Both are at work communicating meaning to audiences. And these audiences are usually not designers. Going back to our musical example, what would it take for someone new to this piece of music to fully appreciate it? They would have to see the chronological or horizontal context. So looking at 1959 when Giant Steps was written and 1960 when it was released, they would see what happened before that in the world of jazz and what happened after. They would need a wider, deeper context, or what we can call vertical context, looking at the same time period within the same genre. What else was happening in jazz at that moment? And you would also want to see in other genres what was happening and in other fields. Get a good sense of that particular moment in time. You would look at top 100, Billboard charts, singles and albums released, new music groups that came out, concerts, the Grammys, jazz fests, and so on. After becoming aware of the horizontal and vertical context and all that information that's provided, they would need to go have an active listening experience. This is necessary to assimilate and digest all the information so that you can move to the next step, which is analysis. You can analyze the composition, comparing it to jazz styles before and after, and then you move to the next phase of having a personal first-hand experience with it. Not a vicarious experience like listening, but playing it yourself on an instrument and then also performing it with a group. Now, if we translate this music list to a more general list, appreciation seems to be fostered by these things. I believe an interactive timeline can provide these things: the chronology, the different kinds of contexts, analysis, connections. What it can't do is provide the hands-on experiences, but it at least can provide resources for those. Hands-on experiences and appreciation. It's difficult to foster a sense of appreciation. It can't be demanded or forced. But having a first-hand experience, not a vicarious experience, is crucial. It's hard and difficult to appreciate this without having experienced this.
I did it.
It's difficult to appreciate this without painting the letters yourself. It's difficult to appreciate these typefaces without having the calligraphic experience making the letter forms. It's difficult to appreciate typesetting a 300-page book in InDesign without having hand-composed type for letterpress. Now let's take a look at the version 1 prototype. The website interface has three main areas: the timeline window here, the bottom navigation here, and the right side navigation here. There is a date line, or what we could call a timeline ruler, going horizontally, and the main timeline about lettering and typography will be beneath it, and all the contextual timelines will be above it. The bottom navigation follows standard conventions for timelines, where clicking on the left button will take you into the past, and clicking on the right button will take you into the future. This blue indicator will function in a very similar way to other time-based applications like Adobe Audition, where the indicator is above. You can click and drag and reposition it on the area you want to focus on, or you can move these handles and shorten the amount of space you're focusing on. This also functions with a scroll wheel on a traditional mouse or on a Magic Mouse, so as I scroll up or down, the zoom will change. The main timeline for lettering and typography will show entries about a particular typeface or lettering style. There will be no rollovers, so when you're mousing around, it won't be unnecessary flashing of color as you move across the screen. A single click will highlight an entry in cyan for now, and that will also load the date and it will also add a now line to show you where you are when the screen is filled with more contextual timelines and other visual clutter. This will be necessary to see your place. This arrangement shows the chronological horizontal context I was previously talking about, where you can see what came before the entry that you're looking at, or what came after, or what happened concurrently. Double-clicking on an entry will load a pop-up window. It will show a visual example of the lettering or type, the name, classification, geographic area, the date will be repeated, and you'll have a text excerpt and a read more link that will take you to a page already on the web somewhere that will have more info, most likely Wikipedia or any other resources related to that entry. The viewer will need to double click on the entry to close the pop-up window. I mean, we may add an X in the upper left corner to close the window as well. We'll find that out through user testing. But only one window will be open at a time to keep the screen less cluttered. Contextual timelines will allow the viewer to learn what else was happening in the world at the same time as a selected entry. If we choose the Imperial Roman capitals again, we move to the right side navigation where these toggle buttons are. Each one will load above the timeline ruler, and we can turn them all on or all off with this group toggle button here as well. So in world events, you can see what was happening with Mount Vesuvius erupting in Pompeii, what's happening in religion, world leaders and politics. Paper was invented in China, and the Colosseum was built in Rome. These provide that vertical context mentioned earlier in the presentation. It also allows for further exploration, because if you know something else that you see here, that's a new entry point. So if you've been to Notre Dame, let's say in Paris, this would get your attention, and then you'd look down here to see what was happening in the world of lettering. I'm going to turn off these timelines here. And while we're still looking at the selected entry, we can take a look at this last section here in the right side navigation. This provides even more context. Here we have eras, which broadly define large spans of time. Here for these caps, we have the ancient and classical art. There's a bit of overlap into Middle Ages, medieval. We get into early modern. And these eras can be further broken down into artistic periods that are very common: Renaissance, Baroque, Neoclassical, Romantic, Modern. And as we get into the modern and contemporary period, these can be further broken down into artistic movements. Once the architecture of the online system is working and handling all the sample and test data, we can begin populating the system with actual data. Many graphic design books and typography books contain timelines, or at least lists of important dates. Like the Meg's History of Graphic Design, the 4th edition has some wonderful contextual timelines, but the 5th edition removed those in favor of some lists. I'm waiting to see what the 6th edition looks like. Type, Form, and Communication is another book I would use. In addition, the Mac McGrew, Rob Roy Kelly books, other typography books, Wikipedia and online encyclopedias. And I would contact the historyofinformation.com website to find out if they would share any of the data and information they already have. Hopefully I can acquire some data from existing sources rather than doing data entry on my own. Although, if I can't acquire data, the consultants and developers I've been working with are suggesting to hire a staff of data entry workers rather than use a web crawler as we would still need somebody to scrutinize and clean up and edit the data collected to avoid any broken links and constantly manage those broken links. So this part is still to be determined. Plans for version 2.0 make more of a visible distinction between entries related to lettering and entries related to typography in the main timeline. Most likely this will involve color, so you can easily tell the difference between the two entry types, and hopefully this can be taken care of in version 1. I'd like to add 5 more contextual timelines, these specifically. Let's take a look at graphic design. We have an example here. It's an interactive PDF that I made for students in an Intro to Graphic Design course. In the bookmark section, you can see the list of designers that we're looking at in this particular course. We change the designers every term, so in this particular example, we have this collection. All the names and examples of the work are arranged chronologically, and the artwork is clickable to take you to a section where you can see a sample of the work. This helps students see the development and changes in design and typography, and also the contributions to the field. Let's take a look at Manuel Estrada and see a little bit of the collection. I'd like to add a search feature by font name, typeface designer, and foundry. And lastly, some way of revealing or highlighting visible connections between entries. Maybe this is something for 3.0, but this is what prompted this project in the first place for me. This would be to show the influence on one entry from entries that predate it. To also see the influence an entry has on things that follow it. To see how letterform styles branch into other styles. Another resource and connection is, for lack of better name right now, I'm just calling it significant connections. This is best described as a path to discovering resources. Once again, using our go-to Roman caps example, we see the full breadth of everything included in this pathway. Let's zoom into this area here. And as we scroll down the timeline, we see the contributions of many people like Johnston. We see The Origin of the Serif by Father Kadich. We see Carol Twombly's Trajan Font, Tom Kemp's book on formal brush lettering, and other videos and books and resources.
A couple years later, it made its movie poster debut here for Hector Babenco's At Play in the Fields of the Lord. After that, it was on The Bodyguard and Scent of a Woman. Then it was on 3 1993 box office hits. By 1994, it was everywhere.
I did not encounter these all in chronological order, but, for instance, I saw Paul Herrera's presentation at TypeCon in Denver back in 2015, and this presentation was on the work of Father Kadich. And Paul Shaw's work on The Eternal Letter didn't come out, it came out that same year, but I didn't find out about it until 2018. But these two resources filled many gaps of missing information for me. Now a call for feedback and funding. The Scratchboard Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit charitable organization established in 2018 in Illinois to apply for grant funding and to accept donations to build interactive resources just like this. Let us know if you'd like to volunteer your time, resources, or advice by giving us a call, sending us an email. You can visit the website at scratchboardfoundation.org to find our contact info, make a tax-deductible donation as an individual or a business. This project will take a great deal of time and energy to complete, but I feel that this interactive timeline will be a valuable resource for many. Thank you very much for your time and attention, and I hope you enjoy the rest of TypeCon 2021. Thank you.